All right, there we go. Welcome everyone to Stop Letting Imposter Syndrome Block Your Manifestations. This is the third in our series, Rewired to Receive, Manifesting for Neurospicy Brains. And hello and welcome. I'm Valerie Lewis. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I think most of you know I am a psychic medium and channeler, a spiritual mentor, and I also have a neurospicy brain. So before we get into anything, I just want to acknowledge something for everyone. Showing up for yourself, especially for work that asks you to look at the tougher places, look at the places where you might feel small or feel less than, that is not insignificant. That's a really important step. So the fact that you're here is really important and significant on your journey. It really means something. And while we're talking about showing up and doing the work, let me just say that you will need to take action on the things that are presented today. Imposter syndrome is not something that you can think your way out of. So if that's what you've been trying to do, that's why it's not working. It's not something that just knowledge of the problem will help you solve. You need to actively create and seek out ways to do the exact thing or things that imposter syndrome is telling you that you can't do. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we get into today's presentation. So you can keep your cameras on or cameras off. I prefer you keep them on, but that's only if you feel comfortable. Today's session is going to be 90 minutes. That's going to include the teaching, the presentation. We'll have a practice so where we can actually go in as a group and do the work together. And then we'll have hot seat coaching at the end. Luckily, we have a small group, so everybody's going to have a chance to get into the hot seat, providing we have enough time there at the end. If you have questions as we go along over the material, please make sure you're using the chat and that you put those questions over in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on those and be mindful and answer the questions as they come up. So let's get into it. Let's talk about how imposter syndrome might be showing up for you in your daily life. So you set an intention, you do the work, something starts to move towards you, an opportunity, maybe it's an amount of money, a relationship, some form of recognition, and right as it starts to arrive, something in you shrinks back. You find a reason why it doesn't count. You wait for it to fall apart, or you just dismiss it as, oh, well, that was luck, or that was just timing or circumstance. You do anything except allow that to be evidence that you actually did something right. But it also shows up in other ways too. Maybe you over-explain yourself when someone compliments your work, like you owe them some form of a disclaimer. Or you say yes to less than what you're worth because asking for more feels presumptuous or really uncomfortable. You work twice as hard as everyone else just to feel like you're keeping up. That's one that I resonate with. Or you volunteer your qualifications before anybody even asked you for them. Maybe you watch someone less prepared than you take up space confidently, and instead of feeling frustrated about it, you feel exposed, like they figured out something that you haven't figured out yet. Like confidence is the thing that other people are allowed to have, but not you. Or maybe you get the thing that you ask for, and your first instinct is to wonder when it's going to be taken away. You achieve something significant, and you spend that first 48 hours feeling really good about it, celebrating yourself before that small, quiet voice comes back. You can list your failures instantly, but when somebody asks you to tell you about your wins, tell me what successes you've achieved, you have to stop and really think hard about it. And some of it is even quieter than those ways that we just talked about. It's the split-second hesitation before you share an idea in a group. It's the way you phrase things as questions when you actually know that that's the answer. It's talking yourself out of applying, submitting, asking, or just showing up. Not because you don't want it, but because some part of you has already decided that the answer is no. And it's the exhaustion of constantly managing the gap between how capable people think you are and tell you are, and how capable you actually believe you are. That gap is where imposter syndrome lives and thrives. The imposter syndrome operating in the background has also been quietly ruining your manifestation capabilities and your ability to receive. Today, we're going to pull that out into the light and look at it directly. Just a second here. Some things blocking my screen. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's start by talking about the real definition of what imposter syndrome is, because there's a lot of talk out there about what imposter syndrome is, but I think a lot of the definitions kind of fall flat. They kind of want to categorize it as it's just a lack of confidence or it's just self-doubt. If it was those things, you would have already worked through it and been on your way. But so here's the real definition of what imposter syndrome really is. It is the persistent internal experience of feeling like a fraud despite external evidence of competence or success. The key word here is despite. It doesn't matter how much you've achieved, how much proof exists, how many times something has worked out for you, the internal narrative, that quiet little voice, runs independently of the evidence. And this is important because it's not irrational. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, operating the way it's supposed to. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. I know you've heard this before. Its entire job is to take in all of the information and find the pattern, and then to take those patterns and build a prediction about how the world actually works, so that it can keep you safe and so that it can help you navigate what comes next. It does this automatically, constantly, and without asking your permission, which is the problem a lot of times. So when you have a real experience of falling short, a real criticism, probably from your parents or siblings or teachers when you were much, much younger, real moments of not meeting the standard, or real times when you tried hard and still couldn't make it work. Your brain didn't just file those as isolated events. It looked for the pattern. And it asked, what do all of these things have in common? What is the constant variable with all of these failed attempts? And the answer it landed on wasn't, well, the system wasn't built for my brain. It wasn't. It also wasn't the standard was designed for someone else, which these are true things for neural spicy brains, but your brain didn't register that. Instead, what your brain said was, it must be me. I'm the variable. I'm the problem. So here's where it gets really specific, because once your brain, our brains, decided that we were the problem, what it did from that place is it started looking for confirmation of this. And what it found was a gap, the gap between how I appear on the outside or how you appear on the outside and what it knows is actually happening on the inside. See, other people can see what we produce. They see the finished thing. They see the good day. They see the moment we pulled it all together, but they don't see the struggle. They don't see what it took us to get there. They don't see the days that it didn't work. They don't see the failures. They don't see what it actually cost us. But we're able to see all of that. And when our brain or when we compare what they see to what we know, the prediction kind of writes itself. They think I'm more capable than I actually am. And eventually, they're going to figure that out. That's imposter syndrome. The prediction isn't a thought that you're just choosing to have. So this is why you can't just think your way out of it. It's a program that your brain wrote to make sense of all of the real life experiences that you've had. And that program has been running in the background ever since, filtering what you allow yourself to receive. shaping what you believe you've earned, and quietly setting the ceiling on what you let yourself actually keep. Imposter syndrome is a prediction your brain made and keeps making because that's what brains do. It's a learned neural pattern, which means, here's the good news, it can be unlearned. But it can't be unlearned with affirmations and positive talk and shifting your mindset. Those things all have their place. But with neurospicy brains specifically, this is something that goes much, much deeper. So let's talk about what is deeper, what is beneath the surface, the loop running underneath. Here's what's happening neurologically. Figuring out the neuroscience of why my brain what it does has been so helpful for me. So I really hope that this deeper understanding of what is going on really benefits you as well. So neurologically, at the center of imposter syndrome is a feedback loop between two key brain regions, the anterior cingulate, I always say that word wrong, cingulate, cortex, and one of its main jobs is to govern error detection, and also the prefrontal cortex, which handles self-evaluation and executive function. Now, when imposter syndrome is active, the brain is on constant error detection mode. It is seeking to confirm the prediction that you are not as capable as everyone thinks. So every mistake confirms that pattern. Every success, however, gets filtered out because it doesn't fit the prediction. The brain literally dismisses evidence that contradicts what it already believes, which is you are not capable. This is why your achievements don't really land. This is why compliments just kind of roll off you. You don't really take them as being truthful. This is why no amount of external validation actually touches the imposter syndrome and helps you rewrite it. Your brain has been built to only look for the data that confirms the story and to ignore any data that doesn't confirm the story. And for neurospicy brains, this loop runs louder, faster, and much, much deeper, which brings us to the second part. There are 4 specific reasons why imposter syndrome is more persistent, more intense for neurospicy brains, why it actually runs deeper. The first one is because you have receipts. We're going to talk about all of these in more detail. The second reason is you've been masking. I know that's a term that most neurospicy people understand. The third one is your output is inconsistent. We'll definitely talk about that one. And the fourth one is RSD lives in your body, and we will talk about RSD and what it is. We're going to go over each one of these part by part. So let's talk about the first one. Reason 1, you have the receipts. Neurospicy brains process deeply and feel everything at a much higher intensity. The same mechanism that gives you massive empathy, creativity, and pattern recognition also means that every criticism, every failure, every time you didn't measure up gets encoded more strongly than it would for a neurotypical brain. Most of us also spent years, often before we had any understanding that our brains were different, being told that we were too much, too scattered, too sensitive, we're not trying hard enough. Maybe some of us were told we were too loud, we're not consistent enough. That one lands for me. I told myself I wasn't consistent enough. Consistency has always been something that I've been self-critical about. Or maybe the bar was just set for a different kind of brain and we kept not clearing it. So when imposter syndrome says you're going to get found out, for neurospicy brains, that fear is backed by what feels like a mountain of evidence, real lived experience that the brain filed as proof, as truth. And think about what that evidence actually might look like for you. Every time you forgot something important that everyone else seemed to remember effortlessly, every time that you lost track of a conversation, a deadline, a commitment, not because you didn't care, but because your brain works differently and nobody had told you that yet. It's every time you could see exactly what needed to be done and yet you still just couldn't make yourself do it. That one still gets me to this day. Every time you started something with complete certainty and then watched yourself not finish it. I've got a craft room full of that evidence. Every time you were brilliant in one moment and then completely unavailable in the next. All of those are your receipts. It's the report card that says you're not working up to your potential. The jobs that didn't work out. The relationships where you were too much or not enough. The times you overcorrected, overexplained, overworked, and still managed to come up short by some standard that was never designed for you anyway. None of that was actually a failure. All of it was just a neurospicy brain navigating in a world that was built for a different kind of wiring. But your brain didn't wire it, didn't file it that way, probably because this started long before, way back in your youth, before you even knew about these things, before you could even cognitively or conceptually say, wait a minute, is that a standard I'm even supposed to reach? Before all of that, you just filed it as personal, as proof, as the reason why the other shoe is always about to drop and someone is always going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing. That's the mountain that imposter syndrome is standing on. All of that proof, all of those receipts. And that is why it feels so much bigger and so much harder to shake, especially for neural spicy brains. So that's reason number one, you have the receipts. Reason number two, you've been masking. Many neurospicy people, consciously or not, have spent years masking, performing as a neurotypical person would, hiding how their brain actually works in order to fit in order to keep the job, maintain the relationship, or just survive the environment. When you've been performing a version of yourself to be accepted, imposter syndrome doesn't feel like fear, it feels like fact. Because in a very real sense, the version people saw wasn't the full version of you. You edited yourself. You managed what was visible. You got real good at presenting the parts that would be received well, and you kept the rest out of sight. And it worked. People responded to that version. They respected that version. Maybe they even celebrated that version. But you know what it took to produce it. You know what was happening behind it. You know the difference between the version they saw and the full reality of what was going on inside. And so when someone tells you you're capable or talented or really creative or impressive, your brain immediately cross-references that against everything you know that they don't know. And the conclusion it draws is, well, they're responding to the performance, not to me. That's why the mask feels like the fraud. Not because you were intentionally being dishonest and pretending to be someone you weren't, but because you were surviving. Because the praise landed on something that you constructed, that outward, forward-facing version that you made up, it never quite fully felt like it was actually meant for you. And the exhaustion of that, the cognitive and emotional load of constantly performing, constantly constructing this version that everyone else will accept, is part of why so many neurospicy people feel like they are just one bad day away from being exposed. One day when they're just too tired or too overwhelmed to perform, to create and construct that version that other people will accept. One day when the mask is just too heavy, just one day away from everything falling apart. That's usually how imposter syndrome also shows up for us. So that's number 2, masking. Let's talk about number 3. Your output is inconsistent. I could do a whole example event on just inconsistency and consistency and how neurotypical brains don't work that way, but how we've been punishing ourselves because we think we should work that way. But let's stick to the script. So, neurospicy brains don't perform linearly. Some days everything flows. We are in the zone. Creativity is there. We feel motivated. We can get shit done. You're clear, productive, creative. You're on. And some days, those same exact tasks, same things, feel absolutely impossible. I just can't get there. I can't get motivated. This inconsistency is real and it's very neurological and it has an explanation. We're not going to get into the depth of the explanation of why our brains work that way, but just realizing that our brains work that way. Here's what your brain does with that inconsistency when it comes to imposter syndrome. It treats the good days like flukes, and it treats the bad days, again, as evidence. This is evidence of why you are an imposter. So even when you have that undeniable proof that you can actually do the thing, a great session, maybe a strong piece of work that you've created, might be a project at your actual job, or maybe if you're an artist, it's something that you created that is actually great, or an actual win, a success. Your imposter syndrome immediately dismisses it. That was a good day, but that wasn't really me. The real me is the one who couldn't get out of bed last Tuesday. So your inconsistent output is also one more thing that your brain uses to justify, to confirm this imposter syndrome. And now we're going to move on to the 4th and the final. The reason number 4, rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD for short, is very, very common in ADHD and neurospicy brains. It's been documented many, many times, and it creates a direct link between perceived rejection and physical emotional overwhelm. Now, I'm going to stop for a minute. RSD, I highly suggest you look into this. I looked into it when I first became aware of it. And again, this is another topic that could be a full standalone event all on its own. It can definitely help you shed some light on your life and probably the experiences that you've had. But for today, we're going to talk about specifically how RSD relates to imposter syndrome. So for people with RSD, and if you're neurospicy like me, you have it. Don't go looking for it. Just take my word for it. You have it. The fear of being exposed as a fraud isn't just a thought. It's a full body response. We're talking about a genuine neurological event that creates a response in your physical body. When the threat of rejection or exposure registers in a neurospicy brain, the limbic system, another part of the brain, and this is the part of the brain that's responsible for emotional processing and threat detection, it activates as if the threat is already happening. Not it might happen, not it could happen, but it is happening. And it is happening right now. The brain does not distinguish clearly between the anticipation of something painful and the experience of it. So the same stress response fires either way. Cortisol releases, the nervous system shifts into protective mode, your heart rate changes, your chest tightens. Some people even feel it as a wave of heat or shame. Some people feel it as a sudden drop, like the floor falling out from beneath your feet. Some people go numb. Some go into overdrive, talking faster, explaining more, trying to get ahead of it. That's one that I commonly fall into. the overdrive response. And for neurospicy brain specifically, this response is amplified once again because of how we're built and how we're wired. Amplified because the emotional processing centers are more reactive, and the regulation systems that would down regulate us back into a calm state are less automatic. So neurotypical brains, they have more bandwidth to intercept the threat signal before it becomes a full body experience. However, neurospicy brains, we often don't get that buffer. I would say 0.1% till we get that buffer unless we actually practice putting it in place. But automatically, we don't get that buffer. So the signal goes straight to the body before our rational mind has a chance to weigh in or intercept it. So when you walk into a room and you wonder if today is the day that someone figures you out and test says that you don't belong there, that thought doesn't stay in your head like it would for neurotypical people. That's a thought, okay, I can reason with it and dismiss it. It doesn't do that for neurospicy brains. What happens is that it lands in your chest, in your stomach, in your belly. Your body is already automatically responding to something that hasn't even happened yet. And because it feels so real, visceral in your body, the brain treats it like it is real, which is why avoiding the situation, shrinking back, or not asking for the thing sometimes it doesn't even feel like a choice. It feels like the only option available because we are literally in survival mode. I'm not choosing to shrink back. I have to shrink back because there is apparent danger right in front of me. It's what your brain does. So I want everyone to take a moment here and stop and think for a moment how your body feels or reacts when you think you might finally be discovered as a fraud. Everyone's here because you know what imposter syndrome is. So think about the last time maybe you experienced imposter syndrome, or the last time someone, or maybe think about if someone was about to finally point out or finally say something that specifically names you not being capable, like you've been telling people you are. What does that feel like for you? Where does that show up for you in your body? And I invite you to take a moment to use the chat. If you feel comfortable sharing with the group, go ahead and put over in chat how that shows up for you in your body. And while you're thinking about that and while you're putting it over in chat, I'll go ahead and share my personal experience. For me, when I know that I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, I'm nervous, I'm sweating like a lot. I profusely sweat. I'm pitting out. My shirt is all wet. I feel like running away, like literally an actual flight response. I don't want to be here. I don't want to say the thing. I don't want to interact. I want to run away. And sometimes I have a full-on anxiety attack. My chest constricts and I lose my words. I hate this part. When I lose my words, it's like my cognitive abilities completely go offline and I struggle to communicate my thoughts or whatever concept I was supposed to or trying to communicate. So that's how it shows up for me in my body. It almost feels like a shutdown or a wall or an anxiety attack. Let me just check the chat one moment. Someone said, my body tightens up and my anxiety starts to peak at overwhelm. Absolutely. Belly knots and muscles tighten, anxiety shakes. Yep. So a lot of us have that anxiety response to feeling like we're about to be found out. My breathing becomes shallow and rushed. Yes. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing that. And this is good because the ability to locate and understand how your body responds is really, really, really going to help you. Sometimes I talk to people and they're not quite sure because they've never slowed down enough to find that reaction in their body. So the fact that you all were able to identify it so quickly is really, really going to help you. So again, imposter syndrome for neurospicy brains isn't just a cognitive pattern. It is that, and it's a nervous system response. It lives in the body, not just in your mind, which is why just thinking your way out of this imposter syndrome is not going to work. So if you've been aware of imposter syndrome, reading books about it, understanding it, and trying to shift your mindset, shift your beliefs, and still not seeing any headway on it, this is why. Because it's actually in your body as well, not just your mind, not just a cognitive thing. So those are the 4 reasons. Let's move on. Here's what we know so far. Here's what we've established. Imposter syndrome is a prediction your brain built from real experience, not a mindset. It's not a confidence issue. It's a program that's been running in the background, deciding what you've earned, what you deserve, and what's actually meant for you. And for neurospicy brains, that program runs deeper because your brain encoded every shortfall as personal proof. You spent years, decades, most of my life, in my case, performing a version of yourself that people never fully saw. They never fully saw who I truly was. And really, I didn't even know I was doing that. I thought that's what everybody did. Your inconsistent output gave the fraud narrative constant new material. Oh, you didn't finish that thing, so this is why you're a fraud. And then RSD put the whole thing in your body, not just your mind. So you couldn't just think your way out of it. We've got a whole nother ball of wax to deal with our neurospicy brain. So that's what we're working with. Now, let's talk about what all of that is doing to your manifestation. So how imposter syndrome becomes a block to you manifesting life that you truly want to manifest. Manifestation at its core is about alignment. That's not news to y'all. Y'all know all about alignment and getting in the vortex and raising your vibration and your frequency. But what you're energetically open to receiving matches what you're actually calling in. So when imposter syndrome is running, there's a direct conflict between what you're asking for and what your nervous system, which remember is already dysregulated, believes you've actually earned. You can want something completely and still block it because part of you, the part running the I'm about to be found out loop, does not believe you have legitimately earned what you ask for. And here's some of these specific ways that it shows up in your manifesting. So here's 3 ways, and we're going to talk about each one. 3 ways that imposter syndrome actually blocks your receiving. The first way is the receiving ceiling. You can manifest the ask. You know how to ask, but you can't let it fully land. The money arrives and you immediately find a reason why it doesn't count. Well, that was a friend giving me money. That wasn't me making the money. That was a lottery scratch off. That wasn't me actually manifesting the money. Whatever it was, you always find a reason to discount it. And it's not just when money shows up, it's other things in your life too. The opportunity shows up and you talk yourself out of it. I don't know. I don't think I'm ready for it. Probably not qualified. That's too much of a responsibility. You talk yourself right out of the opportunity. The recognition comes. Maybe you're praised for something and you deflect it before it can even touch you and actually land. This is the nervous system enforcing the limit of what it believes you deserve. The second block is the qualification loop. Before you can allow yourself to fully invest in a manifestation, and fully invest means really ask for it and really believe it's possible. I say you, but your brain runs it through a filter, and that filter is asking, am I actually qualified to receive this? Have I earned this? Who am I to want this? And that loop slows down, or in most cases, completely stops the energetic ask before it even leaves you. Now, the energetic ask. You might be verbally asking. You might be journaling about it. You might be putting wishes and wants out to the universe. But energetically, which is the part that really matters, you're not. You're saying, I'm not qualified. I haven't earned this, and this isn't mine. So you're disqualifying yourself. The third way that imposter syndrome blocks your manifestations from actually coming in and blocks you from receiving is the shrinking response. Right when something good starts to move towards you, right when the manifestation is close, something makes you pull back. Now, I want to pause here and say for a minute, if you're one of those people who goes to a lot of psychics, who looks at your astrology chart, who goes into human design, and everything keeps saying, you're right there, you're almost there, this is your lucky month, the moon is in your favor, you're about to cross the threshold. If you're one of those people who keeps getting that message, but it's been a month now it's been 6 months now it's been a year, and you keep getting the message that you're almost there, you're almost there. This might be why, because imposter syndrome keeps getting in the way and blocking it and delaying it. So right when the manifestation is close, you're getting that message, oh, you're so close, something makes you pull back. You make yourself smaller. You downplay it. You over-explain yourself. You apologize for wanting it in the first place. This is imposter syndrome in real time, intervening at the exact moment when you are about to receive, which it just means it delays it. And you go to another psychic, and the next psychic tells you, I can feel it's right there, and it is right there, but you don't let it in. So you move it out, and you move it out, and you just keep getting these messages. So let me go back and say this. The shrinking response is the imposter syndrome in real time, intervening at the exact moment of receiving. So let's talk about what's actually happening energetically once again. Because the neuroscience explains the mechanism in the brain, but there's something happening at the energetic level as well. We kind of talked about this. And if you've been in spiritual spaces for any amount of time, this part is really going to click for you. Manifestation requires an open receiving channel. Think of it less like sending out a signal into the universe and more like having somewhere for what you called in to actually arrive. You can broadcast all day, but if the landing strip is blocked, nothing touches down, nothing actually lands. Now, most people in manifestation spaces, what I've found anyway, is that they focus entirely on the sending, the intention, the visualization, the energy you put out, finding the right frequency, and all of that matters. But for a lot of us here, the sending is fine. The problem is the sending is fine. Let me say that again. We've been telling ourselves the sending isn't fine, and we've been spending months, maybe even years, trying to fine tune that sending because it's still not landing for us. But for most of us, the sending is just fine. The problem is on the receiving end. And imposter syndrome is one of the most common things sitting in the way of that channel being fully open. Here's how it works specifically. Imposter syndrome creates what I like to think of as a semi-permeable membrane. Imposter syndrome doesn't block everything. If it did, you would have nothing. You would have no wins, no evidence that anything worked. You'd probably be homeless. You certainly wouldn't be having internet connection to attend this event today. You would block everything. But you do have wins. You do have small things and small manifestations that come in. You even have medium things that sometimes land. It's the bigger things, the ones that actually matter for you, the ones that would actually move the needle for you, that sometimes stall out right before they arrive. And that's not random. That's the semi-permeable membrane working exactly as it was built to. The smaller things do not trigger the I don't deserve this response, so they go right through and they don't get stopped by the filter. But the bigger things, the things that you're calling in, the ones that the nervous system actually flags, the ones that actually activate your imposter syndrome, those are the ones that hit the filter and cannot pass through. The things that we want most are usually the things that hit that wall and do not pass through. And here's the part that's really worth really thinking about. You're not vibrating at the wrong frequency. You're vibrating at two frequencies at the same time. One frequency is the genuine desire, the asking, you got that part right, the wanting, the intention, the belief that it's possible. And the second frequency is the imposter prediction running underneath it all. The one that says, this isn't actually meant for you. You haven't earned it. You don't deserve it. Someone is going to figure out that you don't belong here at this level. Those two frequencies just don't add up. They actually cancel each other out. And so no amount of additional wanting, frequency work, mindset work, additional visualizing, just one more vision board, additional affirmation. Well, that affirmation didn't work, but I just heard that Joe Dispenza put out a new affirmation. So let me go and do that one. Surely that one will work. No amount of that is going to overcome the fact that you have these two frequencies that are canceling out each other. You can turn the volume up on the frequency one all that you want, but frequency two is still running and still keeps canceling out that first one. So the work is not about generating more wanting or getting into the frequency of actually believing. We know you already want it. The work is about identifying what's running on that second frequency and what's interrupting it at the level where it actually lives, which is the nervous system. It lives in the body, in the encoded prediction that the brain has been running since long before you started any of this manifestation work. And that's what this practice is about. So let's move on and talk about, how do we solve this? What is the actual solution? So now you understand what you're dealing with. Hopefully I explained it. I don't see any questions in chat, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job of explaining what's going on and what we're dealing with. A prediction your brain built from real experience that's running a second frequency underneath everything that you're trying to manifest, and it's creating a filter on how much you're able to receive. The question is, though, what actually changes that? Well, it's not affirmations. It's not more visualizations. We already talked about this. It's not another round of saying, I am worthy, and repeating it until it feels true, or signing up for another worthiness seminar. Trust me, I've done those. I've run those and still find myself dealing with imposter syndrome. Those tools absolutely have their place. Absolutely. But they operate at the cognitive level, the mindset work, the belief work. And this pattern of imposter syndrome for neurospicy brains specifically does not live at the cognitive level. It lives in the nervous system, in the body. It's an encoded prediction that's been running long enough to feel like part of your identity, meaning you identify as someone who doesn't get to have XYZ. So what actually changes this is called memory reconsolidation. Here's what that means in real language. Every time a memory or a belief is activated, every time it activates and the imposter syndrome fires, it briefly enters into what neuroscience calls a labile state. This is a window where your program, so to speak, can be updated, where new information can get in, where the brain actually opens up to revising what it already knows and what it already believes about yourself. This labile state, or this window, is the opportunity, and most people miss it because they don't even know it exists. They feel the imposter pattern activate. They feel the shame or the shrinking or the anxiety. A lot of us identify with the anxiety response. And they either push through it without registering what actually happened, or they retreat from it entirely. Either way, the prediction never gets a chance to update, and it just runs again the next time you face that same situation or similar circumstance. Reconsolidation works differently. Reconsolidation means you activate the pattern deliberately, or in some cases, it's activated and you're aware of it. You bring the nervous system back into a regulated state while the pattern is still active. And then from that regulated state, you introduce real competing evidence. evidence that doesn't fit the fraud narrative, evidence that your brain has to make sense of, your brain has to reckon with this new evidence that you've introduced. So you have a very small window, though, that libel state, where you can introduce this new evidence. But you do that enough times, and the brain starts to build a competing prediction. It's not going to automatically erase the old one overnight, which I think a lot of work around imposter syndrome tries to do. Well, here it is, now just get rid of it. But the actual way to work on it from a neurological standpoint is to introduce this new way of thinking, this new competing prediction. You're not going to erase the old one, but it's going to start weakening. You're going to strengthen the new one, and eventually the new prediction becomes the dominant response. So it's just a process of taking a rock out of one and putting it into the other until the new one is the one that is actually dominant. That is the neurological solution to imposter syndrome. The energetic solution, however, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's described slightly differently. You are closing the gap between the two energetic frequencies that you're broadcasting so that they can consolidate into just one clear signal. You're reducing the signal strength of that second frequency, the one that's kind of competing and blocking and getting in the way, until it stops canceling out the first. But here's what actually makes it work. The body has to come first. That's why there's so much work out there, and everything about nervous system regulation is trending across all social media and all teachers in this space. Because it's true, the body really does need to come first. Every single time. You cannot introduce new evidence into a dysregulated nervous system and expect it to land the way you intend it to land. The threat response narrows your perception. It filters information. So if you're already activated, already in that spot where you think you're an imposter, it is literally designed to reject anything that doesn't confirm that prediction. So if you try to do the cognitive work while your body is still in the ick of the activation, introducing a new thought, it's just not going to work. The data doesn't file. It doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of slides right off. And then you're right back where you started. So the solution is to regulate first, then introduce the new evidence. That's the sequence, and that's what we're going to practice together here. Let's see. In just a minute, I want to talk about one couple more things, and then we'll get into the practice. So here's the part that a lot of imposter syndrome content leaves out, and that is you cannot just sit back and wait for the pattern to show up on its own schedule. A lot of times that's what I was taught to do. Well, here's the imposter syndrome. Now that you know what it is, wait until the next time it shows up, and here's what you do when it shows up. That really, really stretches out the timeline of how we can actually combat and overcome imposter syndrome. So I propose a different way of working with this. Instead of that passive strategy, I propose active intervention. For neurospicy brains, especially where the pattern is deeply encoded and that rejection-sensitive dysphoria, the RSD response is really fast, we go straight from activation into our body. Waiting means the moment has usually passed before we even know what happened. So we don't wait. We go out and we find that edge on purpose. What do I mean by that? Imposter syndrome has been quietly managing your life. It's been making decisions about what you apply for, what you ask for, the type of mate you go after, what spaces you walk into, maybe what you charge if you're a practitioner or a creative, what you post on social media, what you claim as yours. It's been keeping you just far enough away from the situations that would trigger imposter syndrome, which also happens to be exactly the situations that would generate new evidence for you when we talked about encoding your system. So the work here is to deliberately go back into those situations. or deliberately create those situations for yourself. Not to white knuckle through them and pretend that the imposter syndrome isn't there, but to go within the practice to create the conditions where new data can be generated and filed correctly. So if you're someone who is scared to post on social media because you don't like eyes on you, it makes you uncomfortable, and you're like, well, okay, I'll just wait until the next time I feel like posting on social media and then I'll do the work. No, intentionally set yourself up to say, okay, this evening I'm going to post on social media and I'm going to do the work. So it's not waiting until the next instance, it's making yourself, creating the space for you to do that. That means applying for the thing that you talked yourself out of, saying the rate out loud to someone instead of discounting it before they even ask, posting the thing you've been sitting on, like we just talked about, taking up the space in the room, walking into those rooms instead of shrinking out of it and just not even going to the event or the gathering or whatever it might be. Sharing the idea without pre-apologizing for it. That's a big one. Think about how many times you apologize. And if you're a woman, and we all are here, really, really start taking an audit of how many times you say, I'm sorry, when there is no need for you to apologize. So doing these things on purpose as often as you can is going to help you rapidly rewire and get rid of this imposter syndrome. Every single one of those moments is an activation opportunity. The imposter syndrome will fire. You will experience it. And when it fires, that's the window. That's when you have the chance to do the work and to file in new data, to recategorize it. You're not doing these things to prove something to someone else. You're doing them to help yourself generate the evidence that your brain currently does not have because it misfiled it. Evidence that you can be in this situation and you can survive it. Not just survive it, thrive in it, accomplish it, succeed in it. Evidence that the thing that you ask for, you can actually receive it. Evidence of the gap between who people think you are and who you actually are. And you make that gap smaller and smaller than what the prediction has actually been telling you. Every time you go to that edge and you come back with new data, the prediction gets a little weaker. And the competing prediction, the one that says, no, I am capable, I can do these things, gets a little bit stronger. And that's how this actually moves. That's how you actually overwrite the programming. Okay. Last thing we're going to talk about, and then we're going to do a practice together. Just see where I'm at on time. We're doing good. So here's the problem that most people don't realize they have. Most people let the evidence walk right past them. Even when you do the thing, even when you go to the edge and you show up and you ask for it and you take the space, if you don't deliberately file what happened in the right way, the brain doesn't update. The wind passes through without registering. The imposter prediction stays intact and you're back to square one. The next time it fires, nothing gets updated. Same pattern running over and over again. This is why people can have undeniable evidence of their own capabilities. You've done the damn thing. You've done it so many times. You have all of the evidence, and yet you still feel like a fraud. I'm pretty sure, the Spirit is telling me, everyone in this room has experienced that exact pattern. You have done the thing that your brain keeps telling you you're not capable of doing. So, the way that this works, it's not that the evidence doesn't exist, it's that the brain never received it as evidence. It passed by too fast, it got dismissed too quickly, or it never made it past the filter in the first place. So filing it correctly means you need to do these three specific things that we have up there on the screen. The first thing is you have to notice it the moment it happens, not days later in a journal, but in the moment it happens, or as close to it as possible. Something landed, something worked, I did the damn thing, something arrived, Stop and really, truly look at it and notice it. The second thing, you have to let it register in the body before you move on. If you don't update that body encoding, you're still back to square one. This is the part that you really need to work on. Most people acknowledge the win cognitively. Step one, okay, I did the thing. I stopped, I noticed it, maybe even wrote it in my journal. I did the thing, cognitive. But you immediately move on to the next thing. And that's not helping you. That's not filing it. That's skimming right past this part. So for that new data to actually update that predictive loop, it needs to land somatically. You need to be able to feel it in your body as a win, to sit with it for longer than it feels comfortable. That is the key. If you only sit with it for a couple of seconds and you're like, yep, I'm good, and you move on, I'm pretty sure it did not encode the way you need it to encode. So sit for that win for longer than it feels comfortable, because here's what I know about neurospicy brains and people who are suffering from imposter syndrome. It's going to feel uncomfortable when you start affirming to yourself that you are that bitch, so to speak. When you start telling yourself, I am capable, I am powerful, I am the person who gets to have these things, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And if you stop before you get to that moment where it feels uncomfortable, then you're just not moving beyond the point where it's actually going to encode for you. So sit longer than it feels comfortable. Let it be real for you. Let it register in your body. And the third thing is, you have to name it accurately. Not, oh, I got lucky. This is so great. Okay, cognitive. Okay, I'm going to sit and feel excited about it. No. You have to not just register it as I got lucky, that was a good day, those people were just being nice when they gave me that win or when they gave me that compliment. But you need to register what actually happened. What did you actually do? What did you actually receive? And what does that mean about what's actually possible for you? Name it with precision, with as much detail as possible, because neurospicy brains love detail. Your brain files it and labels it. If you mislabel the win, it gets filed under the wrong predictive pattern, the one that you're not trying to reinforce. So this is how we rewire and relabel things. The practice, now we're actually getting to the practice. The practice we're about to do is going to walk through all of those steps. I just wanted to make sure we fully understood what we are doing. We fully understand why each one of these steps is necessary. All right. And of course, these steps start where they always must start, and that's with the body. That's with the somatic embodiment of it. So I invite you, if you haven't already, you're going to need to grab something to write with. Let me stop the screen share here. All right, you're going to need to grab something to write with. That's going to be towards the end of this practice, but we're going to start by just getting real comfortable with where you're seated. So I invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. I love that, Cindy. So that's the next step. We're going to take a nice deep breath. So we're going to take 3 slow breaths together. Let yourself really settle into this present moment. I want you to take a deep inhale and a slow outhale. Exhale, letting yourself fully be present, fully relax in this moment. Go ahead and take another couple of breaths as it feels comfortable to do so. And now I want you to bring to mind something that you want to manifest, something that you've been working on for a while. The real thing, not a piece of it, not a small, well, I'd be okay with this part, but the big, full thing, the thing that actually matters to you. The one that when you really let yourself want it, something in you gets complicated. And I want you in this moment to let yourself want it fully. Don't manage it. Don't try to soften it or lessen it. Just want it completely and fully for just a moment. Let that desire come up in you. Let it be strong. Now, as you're holding that want, that desire, thinking about the having of it, notice what happens in your body. Where does that want, that desire live? And when you can find it, that big want, that desire, maybe think about how long you've been wanting it. Where does it run into something? Where does it feel blocked? Where does that desire tighten up or drop or go quiet? It might even be triggering some thoughts, and the thoughts are causing you to tighten up. Just notice where in your body you notice that tightening. It's the, I want the thing, but I'm not sure I can have it. That resistance, wherever you're feeling it or noticing it, that's that second frequency showing up. That's that imposter syndrome prediction loop activating. Don't fight it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't push through it. Just notice where it lives in your body. Don't even try to energetically clear it. Just notice where it's at. Even name it if you can. It feels like ... Stay with that for just a moment. That icky feeling, that tightening, that stress response. All right. And now I want you to open your eyes. And this next part we're going to do with our eyes open, still holding on to that ick, that activation, because in most cases, that's how we experience it. Walking through our day, we're hit smack in the face with the imposter syndrome. We're not closing our eyes. We're not meditating. We're out in the world or we're interacting with someone and we're holding this ick in our body, this imposter syndrome. Were you able to locate it, to find it in your body for the most part? Okay. So before we do anything else, now that we've activated that ick, we know where it lives in relation to the thing that we're trying to manifest. Now what we need to do is calm our nervous system back down and get it out of threat. So we pulled that manifestation into our mind's eye. It activated our imposter syndrome. And now the next step is to down-regulate ourselves, to see if we can regulate and get back into a calm state, because we've activated the pattern and we cannot file any of that new contradictory evidence until our system is open and ready to receive it, which is why we have to regulate next. So this is a very simple process. It takes, I don't even think it's going to take a couple of minutes. It might take a couple of seconds, especially when you get really good at it. And it really, really works. How I like to do it is to use tangible. I like to put my hand on my chest. So it's not just a thinking thing for me where I'm talking to myself. I like to put my hand on my chest. I feel that. That's my signal to calm down. If you have another one, feel free to use it. I'm putting my hand on my chest. You might also like to put a hand on your belly if maybe that's where you felt some of the tightness. Feel that contact, feel your own warmth, feel you trying to activate and calm your nervous system, your body down. And I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out through your mouth for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That extended exhale is a neurological and a body somatic way that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and receive state. So we're going to do that again. It's an inhale through your nose for 4, a hold for 4, and an exhale through your mouth for 6. So one more time. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you need to do it a couple more times, go ahead, but I want you to take a quick body check and ask yourself, how am I feeling? Do I feel a little more relaxed? Notice if there's any shift in the body, even subtle. Maybe you're not fully relaxed, but do you notice any shift? A slight softening, a little more space, maybe it's a little easier for you to breathe. The threat response that you activated when you think about the manifestation that you want, go ahead and still hold that. It doesn't have to be completely gone. It just needs to be reduced and softened enough to let the receiving part of you activate. Okay, now here's where you need your paper and pencil. Hopefully you're a little down regulated. You're a little bit calmer. I still want you to thinking about your manifestation. If you think about that manifestation and you immediately get activated, go back to your breath. Go back to the calming yourself down. But right now, I want you to think about the thing that you're trying to manifest. And I want you to write down 3 things, 3 pieces of real evidence that you are capable of receiving what you just brought to mind. So this would be evidence that you've done it before, evidence of a compliment that acknowledges your competency, whatever it is you're trying to manifest, there is actual evidence pointing you towards it. As an example, if you are trying to manifest a relationship, maybe you haven't manifested the love of your life, but you can come up with 3 incidences where you've manifested a meaningful encounter, a meaningful friendship, something that if circumstances were different, this person, I would probably be in a relationship with them. You can think of those things and bring them to mind and write them down as evidence. Whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, find 3 pieces of evidence. Doesn't have to be perfect. It can still be something that feels like your imposter syndrome wants to argue with it. This needs to be real evidence that's actually happened for you. You might notice as you're writing and journaling, your brain going to work, trying to dismiss each one, trying to edit what you're putting on the paper. Watch for that. See if you can notice the dismissal. The idea of, oh, no, I'm not going to write that one. That one doesn't count. That one was just luck. No, that one was different. That one doesn't apply to this situation. I want you to notice your brain doing that and write it down anyway. All right. You have your three pieces, Cindy? Good. Jacqueline, you too? Okay, perfect. Now we're going to go through this for one of the pieces, but I encourage, just in the interest of time so that we can get to the hot seat coaching. But I really want you to go through each one of those pieces of evidence with these next steps. So pick the first one on your list. This is a piece of evidence that contradicts the fact that I cannot have the manifestation. This is something showing you that I can have that thing I want to manifest. With that first piece of evidence that you've written, I want you to read it to yourself and feel where that lands in your body. Don't just think about the statement. Let it register for you physically and sit with it for a little while, longer than it feels natural to sit with it. And think about this piece of evidence. Where does it show up in my body? Maybe your shoulders drop. Maybe you breathe a little easier. Now, the second thing to do is name it accurately. Preferably say it out loud, but if you want, you can write it down. And that is saying what actually happened, not, well, this piece of evidence shows that I got lucky. No, I want you to say what actually happened. So say that statement. This piece of evidence shows me that I can do whatever that manifestation is or whatever. So go ahead and say that out loud to yourself. Say what actually happened. What did you actually do in that situation and that piece of evidence? What did you actually perhaps receive that's showing you evidence? And once you've done that, the third thing you're going to do is I want you to say this out loud. You can also write it down for just journaling purposes, but I want you to say this out loud. This is evidence that I am someone who receives this. Saying it out loud is really important for neurospicy brains. Go ahead and mute yourself if you need to, but that part is really going to help. This is evidence that I am someone who receives this. That sentence is the filing label that is telling your brain what to do with this evidence. This is how the brain knows which bucket, which prediction to put this stone in. Because for a long time, it's been putting it in the wrong bucket. So I want you to do that with all three pieces of evidence. If you have more than three pieces of evidence, by all means, fill that journal up with all the pieces of evidence and then go through each one of those steps with each one. Because it's not you cognitively knowing, I have evidence that contradicts that I'm not an imposter. You've been working with that for years and it hasn't shifted anything. It's you cognitively knowing it, it's you feeling it in the body, and it's you telling the body actively where to relabel it and how to file it. And that is a practice that you're going to have to do over and over again in order to overcome this imposter syndrome, in order to actually have evidence that contradicts your brain telling you that you can't do it, your brain telling you that you're a fraud, which is why because you need this constant evidence to override that program, which is why I'm going to go back to that previous thing is you need to construct opportunities for you to do this. Don't sit back and wait for life to bring them to your doorstep. Go out and actively look for them so that you have the ability to look for them and to do this practice over and over again. That's going to really rapidly increase your ability to rewire your brain and allow yourself to believe, oh yeah, I am the person that gets to do this. And also, this practice will get to be something that you can do in the moment. I invite you to sit longer with it when you have time, but sometimes you're right in the middle of dealing with something. There's someone that just called on you to answer a question, your hand goes up in the air, and then all of a sudden you have imposter syndrome. You can very quickly do this practice before you unmute yourself or before you're called to actually stand up and deliver or answer the question. Remind yourself, no, I get to do this. I'm the person that gets to stand up and accurately answer a question. I get to be public. I get to stand up. So whatever that is for you, you can make this practice quicker, but it really takes root when you have time to actually sit with it. So that's the practice. That's how reconsolidation actually works. It's how it works in your body, how it works cognitively. You activate the pattern, you regulate your nervous system, very important step, and then you introduce new evidence in the window, that labile state, in the window when the brain can actually receive it so that you can update the program, update the prediction. Every time you do this, the competing prediction, the one that you actually want, gets stronger. The imposter syndrome prediction gets weaker. And that's the work. So please practice that. Construct situations and opportunities where you can practice it actively. All right, we're going to move into, we've got 8 minutes left. We might go a little bit over time, but let's move into the hot seat. Do you have something going on in your life currently that feels a little bit more complicated than what we've covered today, that maybe you're like, I'm not sure how to apply what you just taught me to this thing that I've got going on in my life? And I'll pause for just a moment to see if anyone wants to get in the hot seat for a little bit of manifestation mentoring. Yeah, Jacqueline.
Okay, so they kind of go hand in hand, the one that I chose for today, as well as what's happening in my life right now. So I'm looking for a new apartment. I have my want list, and main things on my want list are that I find something for a certain amount of money, and with a pool, like an apartment that I can live in, find an apartment in Mexico to live in for a year, that has a pool for me to use, and that will be in my price range. So the big thing is when it came up, the biggest part was the pool. Because there are a lot of higher price ranges that have pools. However, I know there are some places that have pools in my price range. They're just not in the area that I've been looking. They're going to be outside of the area. I don't know how far outside the area, but I know there are some. Where did the feeling show up? It showed up in my gut and in my head, because I kept thinking, oh, but maybe there isn't. Maybe there isn't anywhere close to the area, or even anywhere close to the area outside of outside of where I want to live. But cognitively, I kept saying to myself, there are pools with apartments inside or outside of this area, not too far away. There are apartments with pools outside of this area I'm in right now, but not very far away. There are. Now,
yes,
they're not going to be here if I just sit here and wait for them to come online, because who knows, they might. Maybe they're just putting the expensive ones online to get rid of those first. What do I know? I'm going to have to go walking, keep looking online, but go out walking and kind of see how far I feel comfortable getting out of the areas that I'm in right now.
yes. So here's the hot seat coaching part, the mentoring part. When you first started talking, what Spirit showed me, and this is my psychic abilities and also the mentoring, is there were multiple points. It was like lights on a map that showed up as far as this is activating your imposter syndrome. A lot of points, not just the pool. The pool is the thing that's the biggest glaring one, but there were a lot of activation points.
Yep.
So every time you go look for an apartment, there's a little bit of you saying, I'm not going to find the one I want. Every time. That
Yep.
needs to be calmed down and worked through the process. And then you get to the specifics of what you want, and that starts getting activated. I don't know if I
Right.
can afford it. I don't know if this is going to be there. And then you get to the pool. And then that really, really activates it because for some reason your brain has said, I can't afford, I'm not the person who gets to have a house with a pool.
Right.
And so that seems like the biggest glaring thing, but there's multiple activation points. So, what to do about this thing with the pool? I very clearly heard allow yourself to be the person that gets to have a pool, but also don't block your ability to manifest that in ways other than the pool is in your backyard.
Right.
Because of where you're situated, I've never been there, but I've heard tales of the
Yeah.
where you're situated. I keep hearing spirits say you might just be adjacent to someone with a pool, or you might have access to a pool that actually benefits you better than having your own pool to maintain and worry about. So just allow the pool to manifest however it's going to manifest best for you. But yes, you were right. Your work is absolutely on the part that says I'm not a person who gets to have nice things. That's what spirit is telling me is the real thing. It's not
Yeah.
just the pool. It's any
Right.
time that shows up as this feels a little bit like that's what rich people get to have, or that's what other people get to have. It shows up in many
Yeah.
different ways. That's the piece they want you to work on. You're not an imposter for wanting a pool.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Cindy, did anything come up for you?
Yeah, I think the most of the time that the imposter syndrome gets me is during readings and hypnotherapy. And so like for instance, I'm just recently moved states, and I met a girl that she had a metaphysical business, and she had some extra space, so I rented a little room from her to try out some hypnotherapy and the people in the area where I'm at. I'm trying to get a feel for what's going on. Um, and she actually referred a couple people to me, which at first I thought it was really nice, but these people were not interested in it. They were more interest. It was two men, and they were more interested in her and making her happy, and they didn't even know what hypnosis was about. So it was almost like I manifested people that were going to reaffirm that I wouldn't be able to fought me and getting them under in hypnosis. And it was definitely clients that if I had attracted them on my own, I would not have attracted these clients. So it was very discouraging. I know I saw it happen. I watched it happen. I knew what happened, but it was still, very deflating. Uh,
Okay. So here's where I want to go, and this is definitely spirit telling me where to focus in for you. You blew right past the evidence, and let me tell you where the evidence was. Your friend referred you. You went right to the referrals, and they weren't a good match, and these people don't want my services, and you blew right past the fact that you have someone who values your skill set, values what you do in the world enough to refer you not once but twice by your own words. You had two referrals, and the weight of whatever she said was enough to convince these people to come meet with you. And that's when you found out there was a mismatch and they weren't really interested in you. None of that matters. All of your brain said all of that is the important stuff. And we're not even going to pay attention to the fact that this person valued me enough to refer me. It doesn't matter what those other people think of you. It matters what that friend thought of you. And however she was able to speak so powerfully enough to convince these two people to come see you. And I'm telling you right now, it wasn't just her looks. It wasn't just these people wanted to hook up with her. That's what your brain is telling you. But spirit, and I don't know the situation, I don't know the people. I know what spirit is telling me. Spirit is telling me it wasn't just that, because if that's all they wanted, they would have never agreed to book the session. It was something she said that was so powerful about you that made them say, well, okay, all right, I'll try it out. Of course, they were not a good match for you. That's not the point. Spirit wants you to go back to if you can, I don't know how much time has passed, but really sit and think with that about, I've got this friend who thinks I do this work so good that she's actually referring me to other people. That's amazing. That's significant. A lot of practitioners do not have that, even if they've been doing the work for some time now. They just don't have referral base. So go and reclassify that, recategorize yourself, put that on your evidence list. I'm doing enough work that people actually value me enough to refer me to their friends. That's your evidence. Also, your evidence is past cases because Spirit is telling me again, I don't know you, I don't know your work yet. I hope I get to know you. Once you said you do hypnotherapy, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, another practitioner. So I hope we get to know each other a little bit better. But from what Spirit is telling me is you have a long list of satisfied customers. You are not taking satisfied customers as evidence. You're taking it as they paid me, I performed a service, moving on. They paid me, I performed a service, moving on. All the while crossing your fingers and hoping they don't ask for a refund and hoping they don't say anything shitty about you to the next person. Am I right? Okay. So you were so scared going into it that once it was over, you were like, oh my God, thank goodness. And you moved on to the next one. But you didn't take the fact that that person didn't ask for a refund. That person was satisfied as evidence that you do well in your job. And that's where Spirit wants you to slow down enough and categorize that. They're telling me you've got a long line of clients who are very, very satisfied with you. You've also gotten some testimonials. That's what Spirit's telling me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go and read those testimonials. Read them daily if you need to remind yourself, I am confident. I do this work. I do this work well enough that people are speaking well of me. It might not be a referral, but it's at least a testimonial. Thank you so much. You did this, this, and this for me, or thank you for showing me this thing, or I didn't know hypnotherapy would work for me, and you're the first hypnotherapist it worked for. All of those things are evidence that you've been blowing right past because you're like, oh, I'm just doing my job.
You are absolutely right. I didn't even think about looking at it that way. You are
Yeah.
absolutely right. I did. People will hug me and cry out the door and say all sorts of wonderful things, and I'm just so grateful that they were happy and they're out the door. And it
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
because,
And they
and
didn't ask for a refund.
and I love doing this work, but it's that creeps in that gets you right in the gut, with the belly
Absolutely.
rumblings and the knots and the stuff, and then I was down the road that I manifested somebody that was going to tell me it didn't work for them, or because I mean, because one guy was fine, the other guy, he fought me every time I got him under. He would purposely shake himself awake. He was a big control. He was a very narcissistic personality, but and it was, I'm like, see, I'm manifesting just, and that's where my head went. I'm the one that's attracting this. What am I doing to attract this? And you're right.
Yeah.
She has referred many people even after those guys, and the narcissistic one she just chose not to work on anymore after
So
my
let me tell you
experience.
how this would work in real life, just so that you can get a reframe of if imposter syndrome was not present and this exact situation came to you. I'm doing my work. A friend referred two people. These two people are not a match for me. If imposter syndrome was not working, you would not feel the need to prove yourself to these two people who you know are not a match. And you would have immediately said, I love that you referred these people to me. Let me sit with them. Let me get to know them just a minute just to see if my work is a match for them. You would have immediately found that there's not a match. Your confidence would be intact, and you would immediately say, I don't think I'm the person for you. And you wouldn't have never even done the session, because imposter syndrome would not have been talking in the back of your mind saying, they think I'm someone who I'm not. I have to show them I am the person who I think I am. I have to do this session with them. I have to prove to them I'm an excellent hypnotherapist. And then when you couldn't prove to them, because you were never meant to prove to them that you were an excellent hypnotherapist, all of the things in your brain said, see, look, told you so. But without imposter syndrome, you never would have even put yourself in that situation. That's the benefit of overcoming imposter syndrome. You no longer put yourself in situations where you know you're not going to meet the bar because you no longer feel that there's a bar that needs to be met.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And you're right. I wouldn't have. I would have been all, I really appreciate your time and I appreciate your coming to me, but I just don't think I'm the person for you. And why I never did that, I don't know. Why I went
Because
through,
your imposter syndrome was running. And it said
yeah.
we have to prove ourselves. We have to prove ourselves. If we don't prove ourselves, they're going to figure
Yeah.
out I'm a fraud.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I did feel like I had to prove myself. Proof
Hmm.
is the exact word. I
Yep,
did.
yep. And back in the beginning, it talked about how imposter syndrome shows up. Is sometimes we say yes to things that are less than what we know is ours. That shows up in clients too. Saying yes to clients that we know are not a match to is imposter syndrome.
Like taking a full-time accounting job instead of getting my business started because I'm using the
That
excuse that
is
we need a house.
absolutely that is absolutely imposter syndrome on several different levels. Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yes, at several levels. I keep
The
telling myself, well,
avoidance.
once we get our house, I don't have to have a verifiable income. And I mean, that there is a part of that because when you're self-employed, it's very hard to verify until you have a couple years of tax returns. But yeah, I ended up
But
getting
it's
another accounting
keeping you.
job. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's keeping you from doing the thing that would actually move the needle because you're doing the thing that feels safe. You're doing the thing that does not require you to prove that the imposter syndrome is false.
I still felt like I needed to prove myself.
Yep,
uh,
yep. And let me say the reason why I can speak so eloquently about this is because I myself deal with it. I myself am working through the steps to overcome it. And it just showed up in a new way that I was like, what? What? Just this week. And I was like, but I'm teaching on this Saturday.
and you're like, I
So
just fixed all this stuff, man.
it happens. It happens. It happens. It happens. And I firmly believe that imposter syndrome goes away at the level that we work on it. And then we move to a new level and it shows up again. And we work on it again. And then we get really good at working on it. So it comes as just like a blip. We're like, nope, I recognize that. But I'm not going to try to tell you that imposter syndrome is never going to show up just because you work through it. It's not going to show up at this level if you work through it. You're going to move to a new level and you're going to be surrounded by a whole new construct. And you're going to be like, oh no, I'm the odd man out. And you're going to have to work on it again. And you move and you work on it again. It gets easier and easier once you know what's actually going on. And it doesn't derail you anymore. It's just something that you're aware of.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, and I like the steps you gave. I really appreciate you in this talk. It did really help. No,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, we are a little over time. I just want to mention, please check out ValerieLewis.com. Check out and see if there's any other events of interest to you. There's a blog. There's a lot of different ways to interact with me. I do want to mention very strongly that there is a mentoring package. I was going to say practice. A mentoring package. It's 3 sessions where we work specifically on what you are trying to manifest and try to get you to a space where we can move the needle. We've talked about imposter syndrome. If you sign up for that mentoring package, it's not just let's talk about imposter syndrome for 3 sessions. It's let's get in and figure out all of the things that are at play. Is it imposter syndrome? Is it RSD? Is it something else going on? And we work on all of that over the course of 3 sessions. So be sure to check that out as well if you're interested in that. And thank you all so much for showing up. Again, this is looking at the parts of ourselves that we might not often look at or even want to look at. And so give yourself, write this on your list of evidence. I am able to do hard things. I'm able to work myself out of cycles that I have been in because I show up and I practice and I ask questions. So this goes on your evidence list as well. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
You're welcome. So great meeting you.
It was great meeting you too. I've been to your classes before, but they've been a lot bigger, and I was kind of in the background. So
Awesome. All right. Thank
take
you.
care.